Do Asbos work?
They absolutely do work. They work in the sense that they give the community some respite from the terrible behaviour that these young people are perpetrating, and the families. They usually got families behind these young people. And they work in the sense that it brings the communities together who previously have been frightened of coming forward, because they can come forward en masse and complain and feel safer in that, you know, there's not only them going to court, they're going and they're getting full backing from the police, the local authority and all the agencies.
Is it right ever, though, to give an Asbo to someone who's under 12?
Absolutely. In fact, if they've got to a stage where they need an Asbo, it's vital that they do it at that age, because that'll prevent them going further on into crime. They need firm boundaries, these young people. They need to know that there's consequences. And prior to an Asbo, there is lots of warnings, lots of help, a long time before they get to the Asbo. And Asbos aren't slapped on people. A judge decides on an Asbo based on the evidence he has put before him.
What do you think about the idea then that suggested here that these young people should do other things, such as join the Scouts?
That's marvellous things, joining the Scouts. But these people have got to a stage, they don't want a badge from the Scouts. They want your Xbox, or they want your mobile, or they want your money, whatever. They've gone past that, joining the Scouts. That would have occurred normally in a normally functioning family. They wouldn't have been doing what they was doing. That's got to start much earlier than 10 or 12. They grow up in an environment that's totally different than most what we'd class as normal, and I use that term loosely. It's past. They've gone past that stage. I don't mean give up on them. They've got to learn that there's consequences to the behaviour, and they've got to have good direction. In order to do that, and to learn a respect for authority that they haven't got, a judge has got to say to them, this is what we expect of you. If the parents don't do it, the local authority are absolutely obligated to take over that role and decide if an Asbo is appropriate. There are other things, but that depends on what harm they're doing in the community. If what they're doing is affecting the wider community, and that community needs some respite, then the Asbos are put in place. And Asbos are not a punishment. They walk out unpunished. An Asbo is a stern warning from a judge, and they're given a list of behaviour that they're not to do. And they go away, and if they do not behave in that way, then they won't be coming back before that judge. They won't be punished. But if they do, then they will learn the consequences of that behaviour. And perhaps in the future, and in most cases, it works. I've seen it work many times. I've seen young people actually be grateful they've been given an Asbo, because it's the first time they've had boundaries laid down to them, and it's guiding them on to bigger and better things. It has changed their lives as well as the communities. And I've known Asbo recipients go and apologise. And it's only a very tiny minority. Even as Asbos go in general, there are only in Manchester, there's only 99.5% of young people aged between 10 and 18. They're not on Asbos. It's 0%. It's nothing. This hysteria that they're being slapped here, there and everywhere is ridiculous. It's a long process, and every Asbo is hard fought for by the victim. And we've got to talk about the victims here of that behaviour. And they're long hard fought for, and they go through a lot of pain and suffering to get to that court, to give their evidence. And they get the justice by the child being given an Asbo. You know, they're not asking them to be whipped, birched, or any of those things. They just want them to stop. And an Asbo, in the main, does do that. And if they do breach it, then it's their responsibility. They know that they've been told them not to, so they choose to breach it. Then they're back before the judge, and they'll get an appropriate punishment. And they do not always go to prison. You know, they can get supervision, they can get curfews, that sort of thing. And let's face it, a 10 and 12-year-old, they should be in the house for 8:30, 9 o'clock. They shouldn't be out on the streets at 11 and 12 o'clock, which they are now. You know, so these are things that the families should be doing, but often they don't. And in some cases, again, you've got good, decent mothers and parents who do try the very hardest with these kids, and they just won't behave for the parents. And an Asbo gives that parent something else to help them manage the child, because they get supported by local services. You know, they're not just given an Asbo and left to it. They have local services that will help and support the family. So it's not either or. Everything there's in place anyway.
What do you think about the people who've come up with the report, the IPPR? Where do you think they're coming from?
Well, I think they're 20 years behind. I could have sat and told them, if they'd come and spent an hour with me, I could tell them exactly what's going on in communities. They're very naive, and this is a very naive, idealistic thing that they're putting out. No problem with people being supported, but these people really need to educate themselves on the Asbos before they start concentrating on anything else, and what the purpose of the Asbos are for, and what they do. And above all, the community and victims have got to be put first. We can't allow one or two young people to run riot, making everybody's lives a misery. You know, that's the tail wagging the dog, isn't it?
Tell us about what happened with your friend last night, a 12-year-old involved in a burglary on the house there. Well,
my friend, one of these so-called single parents, hard-working girl, 3 children, works very hard for what she's got. Early evening last night, went home with the children, and the house had been burgled. Fortunately, a neighbour had caught them part-way through, got one of them. They'd stripped the children of the 3 bikes, a works computer, numerous things. Apart from that, trashed the house, £150 to have a window boarded up. And the neighbour had chased one, got one, and he was 12 years old. Are we suggesting we send him to join the Scouts? Is the judge going to pass down a sentence to join the Scouts or join the Cadets? It's ridiculous. And when he was being put in the police van, his relative, an auntie, is shouting, "Don't worry, we'll have you out of there. We won't allow that scum to keep you in there all night." The scum she's referring to is the police. So what does that tell you about that family? Those kids was absolutely professional burglars. So that wasn't the first one they've done. The way they did it, it was professional. They've done it many times. So there's got to be consequences. There's got to be. The victim didn't have as much as they had, and she worked for it. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So we've got to balance, got to get things in balance here, and the victim has got to become first. You know, she has got to find money to get a window that was broke, to replace that. Plus, she spent £150 having to board it up. Her kids have been not sleeping all night because they're frightened they're going to come back. You know, she's not gone to work today. She'll lose a day's pay. So who's the victim here? It's not that young person.